And okay, so once again, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the Industry Career Panelist event today. We're really excited to introduce you guys to three amazing designers in the industry who will be sharing their design journey and their roles in the current job and a little bit into their past and current projects. So please welcome Lan, who is a senior designer at Booking.com, Dorsa, who is a product designer at Yelp, and Jannis, who is the experienced design manager at Atlassian. So how our panelist event will work today is that each panelist will speak individually in an order, and then we will move on to the Q&A section after that, beginning with some questions by Hannah and myself, and then we will open up the Q&A to everyone on this meeting. So without further ado, I will let Dorsa take away as our first panelist to share her experience.
Thank you, Mina. Hi, everyone. My name is Dorsa Giyahi, and I'm a product designer and design community builder for an organization that I started called Designers and Coffee, which is pretty much a product design community that welcomes designers at all stages of their careers to connect and engage in hands-on activities. You can find us on Instagram and on Meetup. Next slide, please. So a little bit about myself and background. I went to school at Ryerson University, which is located in Toronto, and I obtained my Bachelor of Science degree. I know, very different from design, but throughout school, I was always interested and fascinated by design and technology. And growing up, I found myself always so curious about what people love or what they're frustrated about when using different products and services online. So I got connected with a startup incubator that was on my university campus and began interning there while finishing my degree in nutrition. So my fun fact that I'm sharing today is that I am a nutrition specialist, and I was very close to going into a dietitian's program, but my passion and talent for product and design opened the door to a different career path. So from food to exercise, wellness, and mindset, I've applied that knowledge and passion that I still have towards my lifestyle day to day. So currently, I am a product designer at Yelp on the consumer design team, and I'm one of the few designers on the search and discovery team. And to speak a little bit more about Yelp, many connect it with just reviews and restaurants, but there's a huge aspect of Yelp, which is hiring services. For example, hiring an electrician or HVAC contractor, different services like that. And so a lot of my job role entails research about that journey and what consumers need to create a more seamless experience when going about hiring services. So I typically conduct a lot of research in my role, and before starting any new project, I lead project kickoffs involving everyone on the product team to align on vision, goals, and chatting through any limitations to take note of. And day to day, I sync up with different product teams depending on how many projects I have at once. And that's usually with engineers, a product manager to make sure we're on timeline, copywriters, and other shared services like researchers. And regularly, I'm in one-on-ones with designers, engaging in critiques and giving feedback or seeking feedback myself. But to talk a little bit about my design journey, as mentioned earlier, I began working of the startup incubator as the intern. And after a year and a half of hands-on work as a designer, I enrolled in a 12-week full-time design boot camp, which began with UX fundamentals into the UI and visual design. And that was at BrainStation. And this program gave me the chance to connect with other students and my instructors and just have the chance to work on group projects. And fun fact, 5 to 6 years out, I'm now one of the instructors at BrainStation for a part-time UX night class. It's a great community. So after that, I worked at a more medium-sized company as the sole designer, and they were an e-commerce company called Inkbox. Yeah, still on this slide, sorry. And so at this point in my career, I decided to start the design community. And this was because I was missing that part of connecting with other designers within the company I worked at. So Designers in Coffee has been running for 2 years now. And then I ended up working in a more corporate field for the bigger banks. And today I am at Yelp. and at Yelp, I have the chance to work with other designers of different areas of specialty. So it was an interesting journey going from very small size team to a larger corporation. So today I wanted to share just one project which involves multiple aspects of the Bank of Montreal's credit cards experience on their website. And while I can't delve into all the nitty-gritty details today, I wanted to share more high level some of the outcomes of this credit cards project that I had the privilege to lead both UX and visual design for. And it began with this credit card that was launching. And this launched actually this past November. Because of COVID, there was a delay, but this card is tailored to millennials, and the vertical card design and it being metal led to a more like modern and simple direction for the overall credit cards experience on bmo.com. So this here is a glimpse of the product page and the design implemented that became sort of a template for all other credit cards on the website. And the goal was to just create a less traditional, less overwhelming page, but presenting all the card features just in a more digestible and upfront manner for all potential customers of the card. And here I took the opportunity to think about how we can redesign the product cards, showcasing all credit cards on the website in a way that looks more consistent, regardless of having a vertical or a horizontal card, and even them out in terms of hierarchy on the credit cards page. So we went with a design that slightly shows the card visuals peeping out from the left, and then including the most important information the user would want to know right away about the card. So that was the name, the category, whether if it's a rewards card, and all of the fees up front. So really stepping away from any potential dark patterns that would hide crucial information in terms of deciding whether to apply for the card or not. And the product cards include the option to click into a compare tool, which is on the slide here. And this tool here is the compare tool. So once the user clicks into it, they have the chance to just compare side by side among a few cards that they're considering. And I have a love for low fidelity wireframes, which is why I felt the need to add a screenshot of one of the many wires that I had for this project. But it's really to represent the work that went into creating a feasibly responsible design for a complex compare tool like this for all screen sizes. And here is just another view of the final designs for another page where we highlight the difference between the BMO Eclipse card and a more higher tier version of the Eclipse card, which is the privilege version, tailoring to world travelers. And with this design, we really aim to have an easy to use calculator where users can manually input numbers or just engage with the sliders to have an idea of how much money they can save or how many points they can earn, and so on. And overall, this was a fairly large end-to-end credit cards project that involved so much more than I could show in a few images today, but these were some of the final results. And I hope you enjoyed seeing a glimpse of the process.
Thank you so much, Dorsa. So now you'll have Lan speaking about his journey.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Lan. I'm originally Slovenian, which is like Slovenia is a small country next to Italy and Austria and Croatia in Europe. But 6 years ago, I moved to Netherlands for a better life. And if we go to the next slide, I just want to talk to you a bit about my education, how I even came into design. I'm self-taught designer, so I didn't do any design school. First, because we don't have that kind of schools in Slovenia. So I kind of started doing electrical engineering, which I failed miserably. But then I decided to finish the University of Ljubljana on the topics of business informatics, where I really learned a lot about how the whole agile works and how the economics and the whole business even works. It was really, really insightful that. But I kind of finished it just to get a degree because I was designing already on the side. So my whole studies for 3 years, I was already working as a side job and this way building my career. So my fun fact isn't related to the design, but it has a bit of connection. So I have a huge fear of heights. And I actually found out that while paragliding in the mountains. And yeah, let's just say that beautiful scenic route for me was my biggest nightmare. But how I relate this to design, like if you don't try, and to my whole journey is, if you don't try something, you will never find out if this is for you or not, or if this thing that you're designing is going to work or not. So what I really wanted you to take from here, like you have to push yourself, you have to try. And if it fails, okay, you learned something that this is not for you. My day-to-day job. So as I said, I live in Amsterdam and I currently work for booking.com. I just recently switched teams and I'm basically part of a completely new team where we're figuring out actual problem space of planning. So how people are planning their trips. So we don't have exact product to work on, but it's really interesting because it's a lot of discovery, a lot of research doing there to really figure out, yeah, what are some of the user pain points. But before this, I spent more than 2 years working on flights, which was also a brand new product for booking.com. But flights is a bit more straightforward. Like we wanted to sell flights, but the flight industry itself is something the most complex you've ever seen. It's so many systems, so many complications that can happen. So it was really interesting to work there of how to put all that systems that are very complicated, that legacy systems that airlines are working into something that's very user-friendly and super easy. In my day-to-day, every day is a bit different because it's hard to really describe my perfect day, but some days I have very focused days where I work on my daily tasks together with the product team, finalizing some visuals, doing wireframes, using design system. And sometimes I'm working on a more long-term projects where I really have to discover the problem space. So in this area, I don't even work with any of the design tools. I work with pen and paper and Google Docs or Google Sheets and really just writing a lot and discovering, talking with researchers, doing research, talking with product managers, really trying to understand that. And of course, yeah, creating prototypes. But what I always do, I have regular check-ins with all my peers. So either being designers, product engineers. So we're all in sync because I think this is one of the most important traits when you're working in a product company, that you're well connected, that everybody understands what somebody is doing and you feel as a team, not as an individual showing over work to each other. So my design journey was quite hard in a way because I was self-taught. So I never got guidance. I started first in a very small design agency in Slovenia. I basically started our agency with a couple of friends, which failed because we didn't know how to charge for our work. And after that, I started working in another agency for doing web design. But agency work was very, very interesting because you're always just told what to do. You just have to execute the best visuals you can. You're not really solving the problem because, yeah, you're just being told by the client who's paying. And I also wanted to go outside Slovenia. I wanted to expand my horizons. I had big ambitions. So even though I was already working full time, I decided to do internship in Netherlands in a company called Media Monks, where I spent 3 months and I learned a lot. But what was more important, I made a lot of friends and I fell in love in the country. So a year later, me and my partner decided to move here and find jobs. And this is where my true professional career even started. So I worked first as a product designer in a more consultant type of company. And then I slowly moved into in-house. So first a tweet transfer, and now for the past 3 years at booking.com, where I also started as a core designer and then I grew into senior designer. I would just want to take you through a couple of my past projects. So one being booking flights. As I said, it's a very, very complex space. The images here are a bit small, but like what you try to do is like tell all this complicated information of like having multiple legs in a flight, having multiple options to make it simple for users to book because they don't want to care about what's happening behind. So here I worked across different platforms and across different parts of the product. So from checkout process to searching to filtering, and trying to really digest all that information to make it simple for the users. Then I have two other projects a bit different. So from my previous company, one is Enzo, which was a design sprint app that me and another product manager just started because we saw a need. So it was kind of a side project where we're just doing a small hackathon, which then developed into a full-blown app that now that company is owning and also selling to its clients. And the second one, I worked for Shell, so as part of consulting, where I was leading the design system for the mobile application. That's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much again for sharing your experiences. Now, lastly, we will have Jannis speaking about his journey.
Awesome, thank you. Tough acts to follow. Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me. My name is Jannis Hegenwald. I'm a design manager at Atlassian. Could you go to the next slide? A little bit about my background. I grew up in Germany, so not so far away from Slovenia and the Netherlands, actually. I grew up in northern Germany, so pretty close to the Dutch border. And where I grew up, or when I grew up, it was like the jobs that you could get were kind of lawyer, like doctor or engineer in Germany. Germany's a big engineering culture. And so that's kind of what I thought was out there. I was like, okay, I don't like doctor or lawyer, so I'll do engineering and like business. And I thought I liked it. I kind of liked the psychology of business and management. I've always been interested in kind of behavioral economy, economics, also like the puzzling and kind of the design part of engineering. So I did like those. But during my master's degree, I met some friends who studied design, and I had no idea that you could study this. You know, I didn't know that this was a full thing that people work in design. And I was just like, how long has this been going on? And it was super exciting. And then I started to get into it and like did a program in parallel to my master's degree, similar to Lan, did some just work on my own, just like did stuff, like tried to work my way into it and learn by doing things and failed miserably regularly. Yeah, I really enjoyed, like, I really liked the psychology side of design at that point. And then slowly made my way over fully into the design industry. My fun fact is I've lived and worked in 5 countries. I've been to more, but I lived in Germany, I lived in Australia for a while, lived in Canada. I live in the US now. I'm located in Austin. And then I lived in Switzerland for a little bit. And I think the way that I like to think about it is just that type of exposure helps you as a person, but also helps you as a designer, like whether it's different locations or different environments, like startup, agency, corporation, that kind of stuff just shapes your perspective as a designer. And the more perspective you have, I think the better you can evaluate design challenges and also bring in things from other environments and kind of cross-pollinate ideas. Next slide, please. So in my current role, as I mentioned, I'm a design manager. So I'm responsible for the experience quality. So when we ship stuff at Atlassian on the Confluence product, that's my product, and users say, oh, this sucks, then like the person who gets that feedback comes to me and says, hey, why does this suck? Why can't people complete this task? Why do they think it's not fun? Why do they drop off? Another big part of my role is supporting the growth of individual designers. So I support a number of designers across mobile and web teams. And so a big role is just to set them up for success, right? They're really talented, they're really smart, they want to do good stuff, and I need to make sure, almost like a janitor, to clear all the stuff out of the way so that they can just run and like be at their full potential. And then fostering strong teams and connections across Atlassian. We have a lot of strong individuals, but a bunch of individuals doesn't make a team yet. So it's kind of my role to help them build a team, build trust, build safety, build space for vulnerability and exploration. So that's kind of what my role is. In terms of daily tasks, I meet with a lot of people on the design team. Right, I have one-on-ones with the people that I support directly. I meet with other design managers. I meet with the design leads to coordinate, are things going the way we want to go? Do design members of the design team feel supported? What are they struggling with? What can I help? I also review design work, give feedback. I have a slightly different vantage point than the people on the team. So I can help coordinate things and connect design work, like a designer on one team, maybe really heads down because they have to figure out all the complexity of this task, right? It's super complex, it's difficult, they need to be focused. So they don't always have the time to look outside of their area and see that someone else is doing something similar that they could connect or that they could learn from. So that's what I do a lot too. And then I work with product managers, engineering managers, marketing managers to make sure that what we're doing on the design team works with what they're doing, and that all of those functions kind of go in this the same direction. And in terms of my design journey, so I started as a design researcher. Like I mentioned, I loved psychology, behavioral economics, that sort of stuff. So I started with design research at an agency, moved into a design strategist role, and design strategist is a big term. So it's like they're very similar in my point of view, and I'd be happy to dive into the details, but essentially I did more business modeling at that point. So initially I did more design research, and then I turned that into more of like business planning, that sort of stuff. And then I moved over fully into product design. I didn't really want to just do the plans. I also wanted to see it through. Moved over into product design at Atlassian, and then last year I moved into design management. And I'm going to make it quick with my case studies because you already have been listening a long time, and we want to get to some of the questions. One project that I want to show is this one. This is Stride. It's a communication and collaboration product. This doesn't exist anymore. We worked on this at Atlassian until I want to say 2018. And then it was partially sold to Slack. Slack was doing a lot better than we were. I'm still a little sore in my heart because I really like this product. What I liked so much about it is that we build a bit of a philosophy or a point of view into the product. So what we saw when we looked at Slack and Zoom and all these other communication tools is that they still do, they make it easy for folks who naturally thrive in that environment to thrive even more, right? If you're naturally loud, if you're very confident, if you're very extroverted, it's easier for you to engage on Zoom. It's easier for you to engage on Slack. Whereas if maybe you're new to the role or you're a little more introverted, you might be a little more hesitant to write a long message to a room full of 1,000 people or a channel in Slack. And so what we did is we basically built that into the product that we wanted to make the ability to participate in the conversation more equal. Like, how do we help someone who's new bring their ideas into the conversation versus someone who's been at a company for years, right? Because we believe that while the ability to participate isn't equal, the ideas and the quality of ideas is equal across people generally. So if we can get everyone on the team to speak up, we'll have better ideas and teams will be more effective. And so I love that about this product. I'm still bummed that it didn't work out, but that's kind of what it is sometimes. Yeah, so that was Stride. And then I worked on Trello for a little bit. This is like a very detailed project, but one part of Trello that I worked on is automation and integration. And what we try to do in Trello, so Trello is all about things being direct, being tangible, being visible. Like everything that you see in Trello should be really quick. It should be like, you shouldn't have to learn very much. It's very much a work management tool for like people who usually work in email or calendar, who don't have like a lot of experience with this type of stuff. And so we try to break automation down and make it kind of simple. And so we built this prototype. You can see that it just follows like the classic automation, if this then that structure, but you could do it straight from this overflow menu that's in the main view on Trello. So here is when a card is added to the list, I can add an action. I'll add a checklist, and then I set a due date, and you can basically create automation within seconds and without having to fundamentally understand how it works, because that's what we felt a lot of the automation that it kind of was very technical, and that intimidated our users. So this was a fun little project. It's live in Trello right now. I didn't get to see it all the way through, but we did build this prototype, not all the way through visual design, but kind of just like, here's generally what it could look like. That's me. I'll stop there and let's dive into the questions.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. And now we'll move on to our Q&A section. So Hannah, would you like to ask our first question?
Yeah, for sure. So starting off kind of a bit more general, but if you could give, we have a lot of aspiring designers here, of course, the designathon, they want to kind of break into the industry. So if you could give one advice to someone who is starting a professional design career, what would it be?
I can go because for me it was hard, but don't give up. I think that's one of the advices always, like even if it's hard and you're getting a lot of rejections, don't give up. The right thing comes when it comes. And other thing, be yourself, like find something that is unique to you. So when you're sending out applications or where you're deciding on your journey, don't copy others, be who you are, and also show that in your CV, in your portfolios, in how you present yourself, how you talk about you. Be you, because that means a lot more. And this way you stand out, because there's a lot of robots out there that are coming into the industry because they're copying something that they think they work, but be unique. I think that's my advice.
I just want to add to that. That's really good advice, and just being authentic and really showing your true passions and what you really care about is my recommendation, and just like probably the best situation to be in, even while interviewing, so that others can really see who you are and what you bring to the table.
Yeah, plus one to those. I think one other thing that I might add is that to me, when I started, the design industry felt both really big and intimidating, but also really small and restrictive with like these preset boxes that I had to fit in. And I think what you'll find, like the more exposure you get, the more you do stuff, is that these boxes are actually not as rigid as you think they are. And there's way more boxes than you think. And so to Lan's point as well, like there is a box somewhere or like an area that is spot on for you. And maybe your task in the beginning is more to figure out what that is rather than getting it right in the beginning. So it's okay to go into UI design specifically and realize, I don't really know if this is really me. I think I'm more interested in research. And then you kind of move over to research. I wouldn't or I made the mistake to think that that was kind of wasted time in the beginning or a mistake or a failure. And I actually think now it's more of a strength. So when people apply and they've done different things, I see that more as a strength because they have more perspective.
Yeah, thank you. So my question is that apart from knowing design thinking and software, what are some of those important soft skills that you guys use on a daily basis? And when or where are these skills really necessary?
Ooh, I can start with this one. I always think of the C's. So I've got like 4 C's here. One would be collaboration. And that just like goes such a long way, whether if you're working on a small size project or a large project, or even if you're the only designer in a project, really using your resources and those around you to collaborate is huge. And that goes into communication. So in the last 2 years, working remotely and with others around the world, I've just really learned that over communicating is key, and like just the key to success with projects and working with others, and curiosity. So just like be curious, talk to others, and your willingness to learn and improve your skills, and just being mindful of your own areas of weakness and where you can evolve as a designer. And the 4th is community, which also relates back into collaboration and communication, but just really leaning on those around you to be better, do better, and learn more.
I'm going to give a bit different advice. Next, I agree with everything Dorsa said, but one skill set that was really good for me that I learned is storytelling. You have to go outside of just design philosophy, learn about hero journey or different storytelling techniques, because that's going to help you talk about your design work. That's going to help you talk about yourself, present your case study when you're interviewing, but also get buy-in from product manager, from engineers, from other designers, because you can do the most complicated thing, but if you cannot talk about it in a way that you attract others, it's hard to sell it or to succeed. So really, that's one of the skills that's quite easy to learn because there's so many resources out there, but you have to go outside of pure design and think how you apply that in your actual design process.
I've got nothing to add. Those were great.
Okay, moving on to the next question. This one's a bit longer, but so being a designer for a company often means you can't always design with 100% of your creative expression, as you need to consider business problems, budget, and other stakeholders. So how do you balance your creative expression with these constraints to still produce deliverables that you're proud of?
I can go. So yeah, I've worked for so many companies where there's been a lot of design limitations compared to other ones where there might not have been a design system in place and I had more creative flexibility and freedom. But as for just working for a company that has strict guidelines and a set system in place, I feel I've balanced my own creative expression and expressed it overall with those constraints by still looking for inspiration at products and services that might not necessarily be aligned with, let's say, a more traditional design. And that itself has me expressing myself creatively when I'm, doing early explorations and wireframing all the crazy ideas that I might come up with in the beginning parts of the process of a project, just to have that as part of my exploration and when I'm presenting early discovery work, and then would gradually narrow it down to the more refined designs, narrowing it down and then aligning it with the design system and constraints that I have to work with. So I really use the early phases of the design process in a project to be where I can express myself creatively and looking at other comparables, and then end it off with, bringing it back to the constraints, if that makes sense.
I love that approach. I would offer another way to look at it is one, I think, is that these trade-offs, to me, that is the design, right? It's design is there's art where you can completely express yourself unlimitedly, but design work is always dealing with those trade-offs. So part of it is that design. But I think to Dorsa's point, this thing we see with our users, right, when we do interviews with our users, is that they express something, but they express it from their point of view and they don't know things outside of their point of view. And sometimes we can design for that and enlighten them. That also accounts to our business partners and our engineering partners. And so when we get business constraints, sometimes they don't see the things that we see. So we can be creative in helping them understand the broader picture, for example. And so if you get tasked with redesigning a sign-up flow, or maybe just a button, you can actually stretch that, especially in the beginning, and say, what if we didn't accept this problem framing, but build it larger? And sometimes, or more often than not, you'll find that they say, oh shit, I didn't know that we could do this. That's way better. We should really think about it that way. So reframing it to help your partners understand that there's more or better or different things that we could do can then give you more space to say, oh, this is really where I think the good design lies. This is a way better solution for users.
Yeah, I have not much to add, just maybe another advice, how to deal with, having creative expression at work while being restrained. You can do other things, like when you're giving internal talks or having your own little project where you do more personal creative expression, that you really push more, let's say, visual limits, that you try new stuff. But then when it comes to day-to-day work for the team, you have to balance it with everything that comes around, because that's what Jannis already said, that's what design is. It's solving a problem to the solution you're trying to solve. It's not just being purely creative or purely artistic. So you have to find then other parts where you can just be purely expressive and go wild, and that's not affecting the day-to-day work.
Yeah, those are really great insights. Then my next question is on where do you find your inspirations or motivations as you're in a job that really requires your creativity almost every day? So we were just wondering about that.
So for myself, when I was younger in career, I took a lot of inspiration from other designs, like checking Dribble, Behance, or just other apps. But the more you go in your career, you find inspiration in different ways, like just by looking outside, or like by, you don't find so much visual inspiration anymore, but you try, you find more problem solving inspiration, or by something you see in a movie, or something that certain service does and clicks to and you can relate. So the more you go in career, the less direct inspiration you're looking, but you're looking like how other industries or how other objects are solving something that might be relatable to you. And then you save it in a note or wherever. Like I have a lot of random notes of stuff that connect to my work.
Yeah, I'm not a big gamer, but I do find that game design produces some of the like highest level design in like technology. And so if you're into games, I think taking inspiration from that is really good. The way that games help people learn things and understand things, and like when you start a game, you don't know anything, and then like 6 hours in, you do combos and you understand the world and all that stuff. And so when I think about software design specifically, I try to take inspiration from that, and how do they progress users? How do they help someone get hooked and be excited about doing that next challenge, although they failed like 50 times just before. So I think in game design, there's a lot that I like to steal from.
Yeah, you both touched on what I was initially thinking of, and relating it to UI or visual design inspiration. So just to mention something else that was different, that gives me a lot of inspiration, is just like physical spaces, like a coffee shop, or going to events and gatherings, and conversing with so many different types of people and learning about them has given me a lot of inspiration in terms of like the UX aspect of design.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. I think inspiration is always something, and creative block is always something designers can struggle with. So having that wide range of inspiration is definitely key to continue designing. Next question is a bit more of a practical one, but how do you choose which internships or jobs to apply to? Do you recommend applying to anything and everything you can, or going with more of an intentional approach to which companies or positions to apply to?
I can go. So I know for me, landing the first job as a designer was one of the hardest experiences I went through, because I wasn't coming from experience or a top-notch design degree. So it's very common to apply to so many roles at once. And while I would suggest applying to many positions and companies, given today's demand and just number of applicants an organization receives, you also just really want to make sure that you've done your duty of research, like product or service that you're applying to work for. And just make sure that there's that level of interest in terms of like what the company's goal is as a product, or just like the purpose of the service, for example. And then, once you're actually interviewing, just really keeping in mind that you're interviewing them as well, and asking the questions to see like the culture fit, and if you can see yourself flourishing in that type of environment. So I would suggest having like some level of intent, even if they're, trying to apply to multiple roles. And with that intent, you can just be more authentic and really show your real passions about yourself. And like once you are interviewing, that's probably the best situation to be in, so that the interviewer can really see who you are.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I would say the same. I think cast a broad net, but make sure that the things you apply to, there's at least some kernel of the job that you're really excited about. Like I think if you apply to something where you don't really like the product, or you think the company isn't really your thing, it's easy for the interviewers to pick up on that, right? It's like, it's difficult to fake excitement, especially when the interviewers interview like multiple people a day, like over weeks or months, or just like do it regularly. So I think, just like going broad, but not completely being like random about it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like when I was applying to internship, I did the wrong thing. I sent probably 300 applications and 298, I got immediate no response. So I spent a lot of time finding companies, applying, keeping track, all that for nothing. So I would really advise you like to make, yes, cast a wide net, but also make a short list of the companies that you want to work with and really like invest in that. Like make a special cover letter, reach out to some people there, like spend more time because it's going to be more valuable if you have a bit less, but with those you can really progress and learn something than just sending hundreds of applications and getting very generic no's back.
Yeah, to that last point, I love that. I think regularly when we talk about applying, we start with the actual application where you submit and you click the button, but that's just the official start of the application, right? There's nothing stopping you from reaching out to people on LinkedIn and being like, hey, I'm interested in work at XYZ, like, and I see you work there. Like, what is it like? Like, what do interns or graduates work on there? See if they don't respond, it doesn't matter. Like just try to find another person. There's also stuff like ADP list or other like mentorship areas where you can like reach out to people. So try to talk to people beforehand can get you a foot in the door before you even have to click or like that submit button or even create like a custom cover letter. So I would highly recommend that.
And just to add to that, don't be afraid to ask for somebody to recommend you. Because really, like, it might sound weird, but like everybody's happy to recommend people because there's also, in most of the companies benefit for people, who recommend. But it's a two-way street. Like you get higher on the list and they get some money, but also you get the link with them, so they're gonna like maybe help you, or you're gonna give you some more insights. You're gonna tell you how the company is at, how to really prepare, like what are the points to focus on. So just don't be afraid to ask that kind of stuff. Like, can you recommend me, or can you get me connected with a recruiter or something? Like everybody is really happy to do that.
Yeah, I agree. I think most people feel probably flattered when people reach out to them. So I was always worried about being kind of rejected or people being like, oh, don't bother me with this stuff. But I found that most people are really excited when others ask them for advice and insight.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your advice on this topic. I know like many Catalyst participants and then also myself is always interested about the subject. And I know it's been like, it's been one of my wonders, I guess. So I'm certain it was helpful for everyone on this meeting as well. And so, okay, so now that we got to hear some amazing and insightful advice and stories from each panelist, we will open our Q&A section to everyone in the meeting now. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. I think there was a question from Joshua who asked, who are your role models in design or in general? And is there a one word to describe your design philosophies?
I can start. It's a very hard question. I personally don't have a role model. It might sound weird, but it changed throughout the career. Like when I was younger, I had people, like Johnny Ive or this design leaders who I was like looking up to, thinking of the philosophy. Now I really don't have like my role models or my parents. But when it comes, what was the other part of the question?
It was one word to describe your design philosophy.
I think I'm gonna go back to Dorsa's C's, it's collaboration. I think that's one of the most important things when it comes to design.
Yeah, plus I was going to say the same thing about collaboration, and you nailed it already. I think I agree. I think I like to think that the design, like it isn't mine necessarily, it's more ours, first of all, together. And it's less about us creating it and more about us discovering it together, because it's somewhere and we sometimes need to kind of uncover it. But if I do it by myself, or if I'm too protective of it, I may just never get there. And like in my experience, like the designs where I've like collaborated with others, just like miles better than anything I've created by myself.
I would say also, like the word honest came to mind. And that's so that, you know, we're honest and clear with our intent in design, from like copy to what we're just presenting users. And then also just facing true facts about our user insights and going with that direction as opposed to bias or subjective ideas and opinions.
Yeah, thank you for our first audience question. We got another one, says, for each of you, what is the most fulfilling part of being a designer?
I can start. So I think right now I'm in this management role, and I think what's really fulfilling is when I work with a designer, and I help them, like, I don't really help them grow because they grow by themselves. I can't really make anyone grow. They have to do all the work. But when in our collaboration, in our kind of like growth journey, when I see them grow and take that next steps after we've been stuck for a while, because usually you're stuck for a while and it takes a little longer than you think before you make that breakthrough. I think seeing someone take that next steps, and like regularly it's just me watching them in a critique, and all of a sudden they present something, I'm like, oh shit, this is totally it. They totally made that step. Or they, I don't know, like send a message and it's well articulated and it's very simple, or they're really, really honest about how their design work isn't going the way it's going and the user insights were different than they expected. Like, I think whenever I see one of like the people on my team make that step, it's really rewarding. It feels really good.
Yeah, for me, I'm on the other side of Jannis, but for me, the most fulfilling part is that aha moment. Like when you're stuck and you don't know what to do, it's with every project, but when you figure it out, it's so nice. Or somebody else like in the team figures it out, or you're together. But when you get to that aha moment, it just, yeah, makes you very happy at that moment. And it normally doesn't come at the exact time when you need it. It comes later in the shower, or when you're walking, or when you're talking on lunch with somebody.
I would say the most fulfilling part for me is just that like design is so ongoing, like there's no really an end point. So just learning about users, that gives me the most motivation to rationalize my design decisions. Yeah, and just like keep going to improve and enhance, or maybe change down the road something to improve the experience for users.
Okay, thank you. And we have another question from Trisha asking, for designers that you guys have pitched and did not get the potential success you thought you would get, what happens to those projects or products?
I'm gonna say you always learn from them. Like, even if it fails, like the actual product fails, but the whole process didn't fail, because you learn something and you learn why it didn't work, and you can apply that in the future. So it's all about learning. Even if it succeeds, you have to learn why, because that is the whole gist of the product design, learning the why and understanding the why.
I love that. That's a great way to put it. I think one other thing that I'd add to that is that sometimes you pitch a certain design or a solution and doesn't get the response. And what you'll find is that it wasn't necessarily the solution, but the timing just wasn't right. You know, maybe the organization isn't at the point where we can do that kind of thing, or maybe you and the team haven't done the work to build the trust to make that leap into this new design or something like that. So like you can learn all sorts of different types of things from that. But regularly I've seen that people pitch a design and it doesn't go anywhere. And then 6 months later, we've made some changes and all of a sudden we're like, hey, didn't this person here do a thing? Let's talk about that again. And maybe it comes back and we're like, oh yeah, this is like, now is the right time. Now we can do this. Or we can pick one piece from that and put it into a different project. So I would never see this as any failure. I would just see this as like, this is part of the experience. And I think the more experience you have, the more likely it is that you'll find the angle that works and you'll find the solution that works. But even our most experienced principal, lead, staff level designers regularly pitch stuff and everyone's like, that's not it. This doesn't work. So don't let that discourage you.
We have a couple more questions, so we'll just keep right along, going right along. But got a question from Drew Park, calling from Toronto, Canada. Their question is, what does the general timeline look like for a complete design project or product? For example, 2 weeks, 3 days, 48 hours, et cetera, et cetera.
So that would definitely depend on what itself is, like in terms of sizing. Like I know on average at Yelp, we try and work in 2 week sprints, but there's so many times where we'll circle back and extend it out another week. I find the size projects that I've been working on have been on average 2.5 to 3 weeks. But then there are like end-to-end projects that I've worked on that took up to 3 months. So I feel like it's very situational and like depends on what you're starting with. It could be like from scratch and you're going about to do all the initial research stages on your own, or if you have material to work with to then like build and go out and test.
Yeah, another angle to that is confidence and risk. Like I think if you're okay to assume a lot of risk, you can probably do most design projects in a week and just go ahead and run with it. But if you want to be really sure that you're not at risk and you want to have high confidence, you want to do research, then it'll take longer. So yeah, I think to Dorsa's answer, it just depends.
Yeah, I have nothing to add here.
Okay, so then we have another question from Marissa asking, do you guys have any tips on how to be successful for interviews for product design roles?
Yeah, I mean, I can go. So some tips, I mean, okay, so a lot of companies do things their own way in terms of like the interview process, but for the most part, I've learned through talking to so many other designers and all the rounds of interviews that I've gone that they generally do go through a similar pattern. So there'll be like multiple rounds and then some sort of activity, whether if it's a whiteboard session or some scenario talk through with other members of the team. So I would really take that information and really try and practice with your peers, even those who aren't designers, just to get yourself comfortable thinking out loud and asking questions, because I find interviewers now really want to learn how you approach a problem, how you go about problem solving, think out loud, and how you engage with others when coming up with ideas. And then I know like previously I've had like take home assignments, which I did earlier in my career, which might be helpful because then you'll have more time to take it away. But a lot of activities I find are like on the spot, and my advice would be to just like think out loud and think outside of the box and really communicate with those in the interview.
Yeah, it's a lot about practice, yeah, because the process is very similar everywhere. Just to go a bit more nitty-gritty in that, like there are also a lot of questions that are repeated, which are more situation-based, like remember the time when you had a disagreement. So you can find those questions online if you Google product design interview questions. But for those, what you can do is prepare before, you know, the situation where this happened. So you write it down and you describe it. So you don't have to think on the spot because you're already super stressed in the interview, you're tired. So you might not think of the perfect situation, but if you do that beforehand, you're going to be a lot more confident talking about that. And yeah, those questions, you know, they're about disagreement, about the pushback, about failing, about what did you learn. They're very repetitive.
Yeah, +1 to those. I think what I would add is to Dorsa's point earlier, being honest. Like the reality of design is really messy and it's really frustrating and it's really constrained. And so don't worry too much about polishing things. Like every case study that I review or every interview, people like just tell me, oh yeah, we didn't get the money to do a thing, or we only had 2 days to do something, or we had to integrate it with platform, but they couldn't build a thing. And so we had to go for something that like a design option that wasn't the preferred one, but a different one. I would like just be honest about that reality and don't try to polish it too much. The second one I think is about decision making. So especially early in your career, what I see is that people try to show a lot of the things that they do and like just show all the stuff. And that's great. But what's really important in the interview is like, how did you make a decision? Why did you do interviews at this point in the process and not later? Could you have done a survey? Why did you choose these colors or those colors? Is this on mobile or not? Like some of those, like externalizing, making them explicit, those types of decisions will help the hiring manager understand, oh, that's how she makes decisions. Now I know how she's going to make decisions when we have her on the team. So that's really helpful. And the third one is that there's usually a portfolio or a case study that we present, and there's a story of the project, but there's also a story of you on the project. And maybe you've never done a project like that before, and you were intimidated, or you were uncertain, and you didn't know what to do, or you've done 10 of them so you could move faster. Like, what did you learn through the process, through the project, and how did you go about that? Like, make sure that that's in there too, because that's really helpful for people interviewing you to understand, oh, that's how this person grows, that's how she learns, that's how she overcomes adversity when she's on a design project.
Thank you for that insight. We have just 2 questions left, but from Joshua, we have, what are your future plans as a designer? Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years?
For me, I would say continue leveling up and sharpening my skills in both UX and visual design. I know, like, when I got started off in my career, I was more focused on the UX and research side of things, and I would say my passion really lies there. So now I'm really focusing in on more like interaction design and just being a better visual designer. And that's more for like the next year or so in terms of goals. But further ahead, I definitely see myself, leading and potentially managing a design team. I love talking to other designers and helping them grow and succeed. So that's definitely one of my plans for the further future in my career.
I'm more in unknown, because 10 years is too far. 5 years ago, I had no idea I'm going to be where I am currently. But what I know is that I'm going to be doing what I enjoy working on. If I find a point where I don't enjoy doing design anymore, where I'm not feeling challenged, I'm probably going to find something different. Of course, because I'm curious and problem solver, it's going to be probably in somewhere there, but it might not be the actual product design. It might be strategist or a consultant, something. But I know I'm going to be doing something that I will enjoy doing. And that's also really important for everyone. Like, don't be afraid to change your direction if you're not enjoying it. Just be yourself and be in your path.
I love that. That's such a great recommendation. I think for me, it's like getting really good at what I do right now. I feel like whenever throughout the career, you're really good at a thing, and then you expand your horizon, and you're like, oh, I'm not that good at that thing yet. So right now, I really enjoy working with the people and supporting the team. And I think I'm fine, but I also would like to get better at it. And the other part is, I think specifically the tech industry is still very like male white dominated. So I hope that I can help open some more doors through like the privilege that I've experienced. So I think in 10 years, if I were to look back and I could see like, oh, I've made some space for other folks, like for underrepresented groups, like that'd be really successful. I think I would consider that like a small achievement in a sense.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your goals or future plan maybe. And then our very last question is from John, and he asks, how can an entry-level or senior-level designer build better relationships and communication with engineers on their team?
This is definitely a big one, and has been something we probably all had to navigate with working remotely if you weren't previously. And in my experience, I found just like Slack to be very helpful, like having regular touch points with engineers, which has really improved the communication and trust like down the line with projects, and really trying to engage yourself as the designer into those meetings. So for example, there was a meeting that the engineers would specifically have and go through their planning for a project that I was involved in for the design, and actually asked the product manager, if I could be involved in this meeting, at least as optional, just so that I could be there, have context, engage with the engineers and product team a little bit more than when, like we've already done a big chunk of the work. So just really involving yourself into their process as much as you can, and just having regular touch points so that they know you're considering their limitations and whether if designs can be feasible early on. And yeah, it's a big one for sure.
Yeah, what really worked for me, because I had a lot of challenges with that, is invite engineers in my process, like get them early on, share with them my work in progress, and ask them for feedback, like honest feedback, like what do you think as a user or as a person about this, not as an engineer and tech feasibility. And by doing that, they became part of my process, and they saw that they can contribute to it. They felt they also owned part of it because they gave feedback or they gave ideas. And by building that, they also started inviting me to their meetings or ask for feedback on actual implementation. So you have to be very inviting the first, bring them into your process, and only then you'll become part of theirs. Because if you sometimes just go immediately like, oh, I want to do a visual check, they might get threatened. So you have to balance that to build really a long-term trust. Yeah.
Like, could say it better to both of your points. I think the only thing that I would add is that while they're by title engineers, they're also just people, and like people all like we all want to be seen and heard as people. So finding little opportunities to connect with them, like on a person by person basis. Like this can be difficult when you're just starting new. Like it's not that easy to just like connect with someone who's been in this job maybe for 15 years or so. But finding opportunities for that, or even just reaching out to them and asking, like, what's worked well with design in the past? What would be your advice to me? And seeing, like, kind of, like, basically leading with service and not so much with demands. But yeah, any kind of way that you can connect with them on a human level and build that trust. And I think, yeah, you two said it really well. Like already some really great examples of how you can build trust and ownership.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for sharing your point of view on this. And thank you, everyone, for adding your questions on the chat. I hope you guys found it very helpful. So once again, thank you, everyone. Thank you for our 3 guest panelists, Dorsa, Lan, and Jannis. We are so happy to hear your experiences and about your projects and your insights on these questions that we all had. And I'm certain that our Catalyst participants learned a lot from today's event. And I'm actually going to stop my share and recording here. Okay, so our next workshop is called Ethical UX Design Breaking Dark Patterns, and it will be hosted at 3 p.m. today. So please stay tuned after an hour break in our workshop schedule for today. And thank you once again for coming.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Wait, Mina, it says it's still recording for me. Should I stop it?
Yeah.